Is this series all over?
I'm not going to go that far. If you're asking me about the outcome, in other words, are the Lakers going to win the series, I believe they're going to win this series. I think that Memphis wins Game 5. I think when they go back to Memphis, they'll answer the call and they'll force the Game 6. And obviously, the Lakers could give you a heart attack at any given moment because something happens with them. Last night, we were having a heart attack because after 3 quarters, Anthony Davis had 4 points. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Because obviously, when he showed up in Games 1 and 3, they handled their business. When he didn't show up in Game 2, they lost that game. My mentality was if Anthony Davis doesn't show up, the Lakers don't win this game. They stepped up last night. I mean, D'Angelo Russell with back-to-back-to-back threes. I mean, they was down 97-90, and then he comes out and he hits 3 straight threes. I think that saved the game for them. Obviously, LeBron James was absolutely sensational. I just sit back, and while we're discussing basketball and analyze it, all I'm going to say is something that I've said on many occasions. I've got him number 2 all time. LeBron James is doing such great things. I want JJ might fall off his chair when I say this. I almost might be willing to say I'm no longer, no, nobody's going ahead of Jordan.
Okay.
That's not going to happen.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, it's almost an insult to even bring up the debate anymore. Even though I'm still a Jordan guy, number 1, that's how I am. I'm not moving from there.
Why is that an insult?
Because the man is so phenomenal.
Yeah.
He just finds different ways to get it done. And some of the things that he's done in his 20th season, he's the best player on the floor. I just can't say enough about what I'm seeing from him. But in the end, I will say to answer this question quickly, the series, I believe the Lakers will win it in 6 games. Memphis will win Game 5. Lakers close it out in 6.
What is this change of tone for
I'm
you?
just saying.
It's fluid, JJ. Fluid.
It's fluid on this show, apparently.
But JJ, we're going to miss him when he's gone. We're going to miss him when he's gone.
Let's never take for granted what we're seeing from LeBron James, what we're seeing from Steph Curry at 35 in that Sacramento series. He's been sensational. LeBron, it was on the graphic, oldest player ever, regular season or playoffs, to get a 2020 game. 2 clutch buckets, scores the game-tying shot at the end of regulation.
Hard layup.
Then gets basically the game-clinching and 1 in overtime. How about the 2 charges he took last night? And those weren't just like flopping charges. Those are, I'm going to get run over, and this is going to hurt. You can't say enough about what he's doing.
Thank God Ja didn't fall on his head.
Look, this series is over. I'm agreeing with Stephen A. I think there's a chance Memphis can win Game 5. The Lakers are going to win this series. And as good as LeBron has been and as important as Anthony Davis is, the reason for me has been the play of Hachimura and Austin Reeves. Austin Reeves in particular has looked completely in command at all times in this series. This is a guy, if you had told us 4 or 5 months ago that we'd be in a playoff series against the Memphis Grizzlies and they're running their offense through him in the 4th quarter, legitimately. There was so many times in that 4th quarter, especially once D'Angelo Russell was out, LeBron's playing off the ball, and they're running offense through Austin Reeves. He's 18 a game, 49%, 41% from 3 in this series. What worries me for the Grizzlies is this. Like, Bane has had to do so much on the defensive end. I think he's required to do so much in the half court to get their offense going. I think it's worn on him. He hasn't shot the ball well. But what really worries me is Dillon Brooks. And his play this series, look, this is not to kill Dillon Brooks, because I do think at times he is a valuable player. His defense hasn't been good on LeBron. LeBron's 12 for 20 against him as the primary defender. And if you watched last night, every single time that Ja Morant had the ball, that Desmond Bane had the ball up top, they're bringing Dillon Brooks, his guy, over, essentially ignoring him and daring him to shoot. 5 for 20 in this series in wide open threes. The Memphis Grizzlies can't win if they can't get production from guys out of other than Desmond Bane and Ja Morant.
Yeah. Series is, I hate to say things are over when a team gets to 3, right? Memphis, I think, is going to win Game 5. I'm just not going to repeat everything you guys just said, because I completely agree. I think Memphis wins Game 5. Ultimately, the Lakers win the series. Here's the one catch in all of it, though, when this could get dicey. If Memphis wins Game 5, Anthony Davis, right? The seismograph that he is.
Yes.
Game 1, spectacular. Game 2, disinterested. I thought most of the game, which just blew my mind.
Look comatose.
Literally looked passive in a moment like that. Game 3, spectacular. Game 4 struggles the entire night, had a couple big plays late, struggled the entire night. Because of the inconsistency of Anthony Davis, how can I know exactly what Anthony Davis would be in a Game 6 in LA if it's 3-2, knowing that that's your last home game in the series and the pressure that would be in the building in the fourth quarter of a close game? So not knowing that, the only reason I say the door is still somewhat open for Memphis, and I think Ja Morant has a competitive will to make sure that this team's going to come ready. They're going to continue to play hard and continue to fight. So that's why I think this could get interesting and could get dicey. Here's why it bodes well for the Lakers, though, ultimately.
Okay.
What we're talking about. Every time I watch Austin Reeves, I'm more impressed.
Yes.
The dude has added handle during the season.
During the season.
Guys don't typically do that, right? You work on that in the offseason. All of a sudden now he's going behind the back twice and shaking guys, running ball screen. I'm like, whoa, I didn't see that in December. Hachimura, D'Angelo Russell, they remade the team at the trading deadline. So now those guys can play well in a night when LeBron gets 20. It's not a big scoring night for him. AD struggles all night, and they still won the game because of these other guys. That's why it not only bodes well for this series, it gets very interesting going forward if they are to get past the Memphis Grizzlies because of the way supporting cast is playing.
Go ahead and chime in.
I was going to bring up that point, but that's the big point to me is I wouldn't have said this 3 months ago. The Lakers supporting cast has been better in this series than Memphis' supporting cast. And based on these two teams' defense, based on these two teams struggling at times in the half court, to me, Hachimura and Reeves are, it's crazy to say this, they're the difference makers in this series. One thing about AD, I just want to bring this up, because, I agree with you. Offensively, out of sorts in games 2 and games 4, but he still has value.
JJ, were you more impressed with Jimmy in the Heat or disappointed in the Bucks?
I was more impressed with Jimmy and the Heat.
Yeah.
It's not every day that you get to see a playoff performance like that. Jimmy was absolutely sensational. A couple things on him. Number one, he has basically, since he got to Miami for the last 4 seasons, he shot 26% from 3 on less than 2 attempts a game. He has basically said, unless it's the end of the shot clock, I'm not shooting a 3. Then all of a sudden we get to the playoffs with Miami, and this series in particular, and he shoots 3s, and he's making them at a good clip. I mean, we've got a pretty big sample size, 143 attempts over the last 4 seasons in the playoffs, and he's shooting 36%. That's interesting to me. My argument with Jimmy right now, we don't think of him as a top 5 player. I don't know where he ranks amongst, NBA elite players, but he was a top 5 player last year in the playoffs. He's been a top 5 player this year in the playoffs. That, to me, is more impressive than a 4 or 5 minute stretch of bad offense from the Bucks. Because I think the Bucks ultimately have been hurt from not having Giannis for, call it, 3 games.
Yeah.
And the anomaly in this entire series that nobody's talking about, everybody's talking about Giannis being out, everybody's talking about Jimmy's play. The Miami Heat were an awful 3-point shooting team in the regular season. Awful. It's the reason they underperformed. Bam had a decent year, Tyler Hero had a decent year, Jimmy had a great year. They could not make 3s this year. And now all of a sudden we're 4 games in, and they're shooting 47% from 3. This was the 27th worst team in the regular season for shooting 3s. That, to me, has been the difference in the series. So give Miami credit, give them their shooters credit, and give Jimmy Butler credit.
Well,
go ahead.
Let me go first, because a couple of things. Number one, I found myself rooting for the Miami Heat.
We know why. We know why. We know why.
I believe the Knicks could take them.
Do you?
Let me finish.
That's your main reason
Let me finish.
for winning with Miami? Come on.
May I
Say that
finish?
with your chest
May I finish?
No,
Yeah.
we have Western Conference.
Okay. Right. We have Western Conference. I was thinking, but that would be a semifinal series. I could find a way to get to Miami for a couple of games. But the point is this. I found myself before last night rooting for Miami. Go ahead and win the series. Because we can't deal with Giannis. We deal with Miami. Then I saw Jimmy Butler put on that kind of performance, and it gave me the impression that he wants New York, that the Knicks are next. And I've grown very, very concerned about that in that regard. And then I'm thinking about the 3-point shooting for them this year. And then I'm looking at these stats. I got them in front of me for these playoffs. Jimmy Butler is shooting 52.9% from 3-point range. Caleb Martin is shooting 46.7% from three-point range. Duncan Robinson is shooting 76.5% from three-point range. Gabe Vincent is shooting 47.6% from three-point range. Suddenly they're not missing threes. I'm getting worried, okay? I'm getting worried. Having said all of that, to me, as phenomenal and spectacular as that performance was from Jimmy Butler, I found myself awestruck at the discombobulated, out-of-sync looking Milwaukee, but I couldn't believe what I was seeing. First of all, Mike Budenholzer, a man that we all respect as a coach that is a champion. I mean, you just reminded me of your days in Atlanta. No adjustments whatsoever. They go on a 13-0 run, no timeout. No timeout at all. Didn't even attempt to stop the bleeding. Didn't double Jimmy Butler on his last 4 baskets. I mean, the brother is clearly rolling. Double him. Get the ball out of his damn hand. Do something. I mean, it was like they were like sightseeing, okay? And then this is the thing that drove me crazy. I mean, you both coach basketball. You know basketball. You played basketball on the highest level. Guys bouncing the ball off their foot, getting stripped. Errant passes, spacing, bumping into each other with passes. I'm like, what the hell is going on? It was such a collapse by the Milwaukee Bucks. And I'm sitting there like, Giannis is going up and trying to go 1-on-3. I know when Giannis goes downhill, it's problematic. But he ain't the greatest ball handler in the world. You don't want him to have the ball in the open court in tight situations like that when the pace becomes more frenetic because they're trying to overcome that 13-point deficit in the last 3.5 minutes of the game. That's what Drew Holiday is for. You got guards on the court. They couldn't dribble. They couldn't dribble, they couldn't pass, they couldn't shoot, and they couldn't coach. It was that bad. It was that kind of collapse, and I was stunned. And I challenge anyone that knows basketball to tell me I'm wrong about what I just saw, what I just said about what we saw from Milwaukee in the last 4 minutes of last night's game.
I'm still sitting here in a state of shock that they lost the game. They were in complete control from start to finish, up 13. I was telling you in the green room, the game did a 180-degree pivot in 5 minutes against the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, best overall record in the league. So I'm more shocked that the Bucks lost the game. But I want to talk a little bit about Jimmy Butler. Here's what's really interesting to me about this game. When you watch Jimmy Butler over the years, even playoff Jimmy, he feels his way early in the game. Like sometimes you'll watch him for 6-7 minutes, he doesn't shoot. Mm-hmm. It looks like obvious shooting opportunities, he doesn't shoot. I've seen Jimmy Butler do that a million times. He had to do what he did in the first quarter last night just to keep him in it. If he doesn't start shooting the ball the way he did in the first quarter, they're probably down 15 at the end of the first quarter.
But they were down 15-5.
It's a wrap.
Right.
I mean, they might be down 20 if he doesn't find that earlier. So I thought that was interesting. The game dictated he get propelled into this scoring mode earlier in the game. Here's what's fascinating about the night. We've had a lot of big playoff scoring performances in history, and you can go back and look at the list. And before we start saying where these rank, I hate ranking them because if you go Google top 20 individual playoff performances, you're going to be like, oh, that's right, I forgot this guy did this, and this guy did this. But here's the thing. Most of those games, the big scoring nights, you didn't need every single one of them.
Right. He
did last night, and I'm not even talking about all the stuff in the fourth quarter. If he doesn't do it in the first quarter,
no question.
the game is over. So you don't ever see guys go for 50-plus in any game, regular season. But a playoff game where all of them matter, the game hinges on any of those balls not going in, you don't see that.